Good. Okay, so very warm welcome again. I'm Raimar, and I'll be facilitating this course. So I just want to start together with a short meditation so that we ground ourselves and we are more ready to receive information. And also, it's nice to just sit together for some time and to feel each other's commitment. So we're going to start just by look away from the screen. So look anywhere except the screen, but keep your eyes open and bring your body into stillness. So just let it rest where it's comfortable. And just start to become aware of the fact that you are sitting and that there's an experience happening. There's your vision, there's the feeling of your body. There's some sounds that are coming in. So just kind of sit back and receive everything. And let's close the eyes together. And we continue to just receive, to let ourselves be touched by the seeing, by the hearing, by the feeling of the body. And there might be many thoughts going on. Just let those be received also. No need to change them, control them. Allow them to be part of your experience. So in the next 10 days, we will meditate primarily with the body. So we use the feeling of the body as our meditation object, as our focus object. In the first few days, that will be the breath. So see if you can just notice your breathing here, to receive your breathing as it is, without needing to change it. And to receive the feeling of your entire body. Inhabiting and really becoming this body. So we are all here together to practice together for 10 days. So there's people from kind of all over. So India, Belgium, Italy, Canada, North America, Sweden, UK, Germany, Spain, Australia. So there's kind of people from all over the world, and we just come together because we share some curiosity or we share some motivation to learn how to be maybe a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more calm, and learn a bit more about ourselves. We all share this motivation to become a more full, wholesome, good human beings. So let's just take a moment to feel this kind of shared group, this community. So we are not alone for the next 10 days, even though we are practicing from our own homes. The people here who are live on the call or who are watching the recording later. And the last thing that I want to just go through is the 5 precepts. So the 5 precepts are kind of guidelines for conduct and that help us to create more optimal conditions for meditation. So they are not like super strict rules that we have to follow if it doesn't suit us, but they are recommendations which will help you meditate. So the first precept, and you can just reflect on these as I say them. The first precept is not to take life and not to kill even small beings. Second precept is not to steal, not to take what is not given. And thirdly, we have not to lie or not to engage in harmful speech. So not using speech to harm ourselves or others. And fourthly, not to engage in sexual misconduct, which basically means to not use sex to harm, not to harm yourself or others. So just being conscious with sex. And lastly, we have to not use any intoxicating substances. So we are trying to practice clarity of mind and self-awareness for the next 10 days. And it's useful not to add anything extra into the mix that clouds perception. So we have these 5 precepts. You can kind of take them as intensively and strictly or as loosely as you wish or as you feel is beneficial to you. We don't want to force ourselves into something super different, but we want to try to kind of maintain this wholesome, non-harmful lifestyle towards ourselves and others. And that really creates the optimal condition for our meditation practice. Because a mind, when we sit down and we have worry or we have regret or we have greed, in anger in our mind, it's much more difficult to meditate. So these kind of guidelines just help us not to create these states of mind. I will also send something out, which where you can read a bit more about the 5 precepts. Okay, so taking another moment just to feel clearly the body, the contact with the ground, the contact with what you're sitting on, the contact of your body on itself, like the hands resting, growing a little bit taller in the spine, and then relaxing and softening face, jaw, shoulders, arms, and torso all the way down to the pelvis, legs, knees, all the way down to the toes. Okay, and then allow yourself to open the eyes and receive the visual experience again. Great. So a warm welcome again to this course. So I want to just briefly introduce myself. Who is this person who's facilitating the course? So my name is Raimar, and I'm the founder and facilitator behind Vipassana at Home, which I founded about 2 years ago. And I was born and raised in Germany, where I'm currently now. And I kind of had a bit of a journey with Vipassana. So I kind of discovered it while I was studying in university in Australia. And I was studying actually economics and finance, and started working for 2 years in investment management industry. But meanwhile, I was also becoming increasingly interested in Vipassana and yoga, and I ultimately decided to kind of pursue it more full time. So I moved to Thailand at the start of COVID, where I stayed and practiced in different monasteries, and also practiced some other body-based movement practices, dance improvisation, free diving. And yeah, I can share a little bit about perspective on kind of balancing meditation in the office world. So I was meditating 2 hours a day for 2 years while I was working, and trying to maintain that balance, and seeing how I can use a meditation for, of course, being more at ease, being more balanced while working, and also finding more rest, and through that also being more productive. But also now kind of finding meditation and the confluence between meditation and movement and sports, and taking care of the body, because often also when we start to meditate very intensively, we kind of forsake the body and the movement. So this is kind of my interest nowadays. So I decided to create this course because I want to share what I learned, and to kind of also learn from teaching, and to learn from everyone that I talk to in this journey. So yeah, you can always write me messages on WhatsApp or on email if you have any direct questions, or of course in these live sessions. Okay, so let's get into the kind of lecture or talk. I don't really like to call it lecture, but my first question to you is, do you know yourself? So who are you really? And I just want to pose this question because meditation isn't about somehow becoming someone else or trying to be a perfect human being. It's really about seeing ourselves as we are in each moment and fully accepting ourselves. So when we start to meditate, and maybe as you've already seen, if you meditate this morning or yesterday with the first meditations, we see ourselves. So we see all parts of ourselves. We see the things that we don't like about ourselves. We see the parts that we like about ourselves and the parts which are more neutral. And this is really a process about seeing what's here all the time and seeing and placing the importance on our inner experience. So I asked you, for example, what your intention is for joining this course when you were registering. And this is also really just a question, like, why are we meditating? Why are we coming to this practice? And it's important to know so that we understand what motivates us and then we don't drop off when things start to become a little bit difficult. So I would just like everyone to write in the chat 3 words of what they or why they are coming to meditation, whether it's finding peace or finding focus or clarity or just having time to yourself. Just write a few words, maybe not more than 3 words in the chat, like this. Addressing my dukkha. Addressing your suffering, Kolya. Dukkha is the Pali word for suffering or dissatisfaction. Accepting and loving myself. To learn commitment, acceptance, and letting go. To deepen your practice. Belinda, why do you want to deepen your practice? What is it about the practice and what is it about deepening the practice that kind of brings you more fulfillment or joy? To connect the mind body with my soul. Being open to now the purification of perception. Peace, energy work, and back to the present. More presence, addressing chronic anxiety, addressing or cultivating clarity instead of just doing all the time, being more connected with what's alive within you. Excellent. So we have many different reasons, being present and calming anxiety. We all come with many different reasons, but the most important thing is we need to start to get to know ourselves. We need to start to understand and see. And so a lot of people mention suffering or anxiety or dissatisfaction. We need to start to see how anxiety, suffering, dissatisfaction gets started within ourselves, how it proliferates and what habits lead us towards suffering, both habits of the mind and body, but also our behaviors in the outside world. And to, back to the present moment. So the present moment is always here. We just kind of fail to recognize it, or we start to get lost in believing our thoughts or believing in the content. So just about recognizing and getting to know how thoughts manifest, how thoughts begin, how they end. So all of this is under meditation to know ourselves better. And part of knowing ourselves is knowing what we place importance on. So all of you have cited different things that you place importance on, that you value in your life, things that you want more of. So these can be classified as kind of conscious desires or conscious priorities. And when we start to sit and meditate, we start to see what our mind and our body start to place importance on. So some of those things are conscious and things you actually want, and some of those things are completely unconscious, and you recognize that actually they don't really align with my conscious desires. So for example, if you want more clarity, but then in moments you do things which don't promote clarity. So you maybe have some problems with some intoxicating substance or things that cloud your mind, and you fall into doing those things even though you want more clarity in your life, or you want to be more committed or disciplined. But then, when you wake up in the morning and uh, in that moment, you kind of forget about that priority, and the unconscious um, priority takes control. Like, oh, I want to continue sleeping, or I want to just be lazy and lie here and think about stuff. So as we meditate, we start to see all of this. We start to see the things that are conscious and the things which are previously hidden. So the things that are unconscious. So really a process of getting to know ourselves, because by meditating, we're not trying to be someone else. We're really just trying to be fully ourselves. I know when I started meditating, I was always trying to be someone else, trying to be super disciplined, perfect person. But this is really not, I find this is not what it's about. It's always about coming back to being fully myself and accepting all the shortcomings, all the strengths, and through that it starts to transform and change. Okay, so when we are meditating, or in the normal life, we are usually always placing importance on the outside world. So by doing XYZ on the outside world, by doing this, by going to that, by spending money on this, or by spending time on that, I create more happiness, or more of what I want, and less of what I don't want. And we're always giving importance to the outside world, and we put our reason for happiness or suffering or clarity or anxiety in the outside world. And what we're doing with this practice is just shifting that priority. So for some specified time period, so in this course, it's 2 hours per day, we are just committing to placing more importance on this. So on our inner experience, on the experience of the body and the mind. So body is what we feel and what we hear, what we sense through the 5 senses in the body. So we're going to use the breath at the nose in the first few days, and then the body sensations in the rest of the body. And then the mind, because the mind never stops. So probably you start meditating on the breath and wow, so many thoughts were coming, and that's completely normal, and that's okay also. So we're not trying to stop thinking. We're trying to recognize thinking and sensation as they are happening moment to moment. So we're just shifting priority from the world and the ideas about the world to just seeing the process of body and mind. And you'll find yourself shifting a lot between these modes while you're meditating. So a thought comes and you start thinking about what you have to do tomorrow, or what happened in the past, or what you said to someone. And the importance shifts again to the outside world and the characters or the things in the outside world. And then you just recognize that this is happening, then you just shift back to the simple act of breathing. So again, placing more importance in the body and mind. Yes. A brief pause here. So the Buddha, so this practice is usually practiced within the context of Buddhism, but it's not a Buddhist technique. It's a non-sectarian thing. But the Buddha essentially he was kind of a scientist of happiness. How can I be happy, and how can I not suffer in my life? He was like us, essentially curious about happiness and suffering. And he went very deep inside to examine this within himself. And he basically has these 3 things. The third thing is hidden for now. But the first one is, by not creating harm for ourselves or others, we already create some basic level of happiness and some basic level of non-suffering by not harming others through lying, through stealing, through killing, So these are kind of the precepts that I mentioned in the beginning, some kind of guidelines which help us create a more wholesome and less harmful life. The second one is to do more good. So just to practice loving kindness. So it doesn't necessarily mean to go out and do charity work all the time. It means just to have the state of mind of loving kindness and kindness towards ourselves and towards others. So not always doing things in the outside world if we are talking and being very negative towards ourselves in our inside world. So loving kindness is both something outer and inner. And this also starts to create some basic level of happiness. And then the third way that he proposed is to meditate, to practice meditation. So here we really start to look deeper beyond these kind of more superficial guidelines that are common across all religious and even non-religious contexts. But when we start to meditate, when we sit in silence, we create a little bit of a simpler situation. So meditation is a little bit like learning to drive a car. So when we first learn to drive a car, we have to do it in an empty parking lot where there's no stimulation or lots of cars to deal with, so that we can really start to figure out how this thing works. So it's the same when we start to meditate. We just give ourselves some time, 2 hours a day for now, where we sit with ourselves and we start to see how this body and mind works by itself. The habits of the body and mind, the things we like, the things we don't like. And later, we start to then bring this also into our everyday life and start to observe ourselves and see ourselves in interacting with people and working and leisure and sleeping. All of these things become part of the practice. But initially, just this kind of simple container or space that we make every day for ourselves. I just want to outline or talk a little bit more about meditation. And because there's many different types of meditation out there, and if you've practiced some types before, some you use some visualization, some mantra, some meditating and manipulating the breathing, manipulating the body, transcendental meditation, singing mantras out loud. So there's many different types. And within the Buddhist context, we kind of classify 2 main types of meditation. So the first, what this container represents is kind of our mind. So this container is our mind, and there's all these kind of specks of things floating, and the mind is a little bit cloudy if we have not practiced any forms of meditation. And there's not much control. We also call this the monkey mind, when the thoughts are jumping around a lot. There's many things and we don't really understand how this works, or how we can be happy and how we can suffer less. And then we have the first type of meditation, the meditation to calm and to concentrate the mind. So, question to you is, how would you rate your ability to focus on what you choose to focus on? So whether that is at work or in your free time or whatever it is in the conversation, how do you rate your ability to focus on that which you choose to do in any given moment? So we have 4, a 2, a 4, a 5. Wow, someone who's very effortless, easy, sustained focus. 2s, 4, 3, 2, 2. And maybe it's different for different activities. Some things you like and it's easy to focus, some things that you don't like and it's very difficult to focus on it. another 2. So a very wide range of numbers here. And that's completely okay. So we all starting where we are. No need to compare ourselves. It also depends a lot on our lifestyle, whether we are multitasking and jumping around a lot, or whether we are kind of have a more simple lifestyle where we focus on individual things one at a time. So this ability to focus is what we call concentration, or in Pali, samadhi or samatha meditation. So samatha or samadhi meditation is primarily with the aim of cultivating concentration. And when the mind is more calm and the mind is more concentrated, automatically feelings of peacefulness, of calm, start to pervade. So we go from a mind that is kind of cloudy and full of things and thoughts and noise to one that is more settled down, where this kind of debris starts to settle down in the mind, and the mind is more clear and more calm and more peaceful. So we all know what it's like to be more concentrated, to be more peaceful. And maybe there's some activities which you do in your life where you automatically experience more this kind of state of flow. Maybe it's in your work or something you like to do in your free time. Maybe it's music or movement or sports or jogging or reading, where you start to become more concentrated. It's almost like all your mind is doing is just focusing on one subject, and the noise settles down. So this is the first type of meditation, and this is a little bit more what we're practicing in the first 4 days, where we consciously have this anchor of the breath and the sensations of breathing, and we just keep bringing ourselves back over and over again to this anchor of breathing. And over time, it might not happen tomorrow, but over time, this starts to get easier and easier, and we start to are able to maintain a more effortless, easy, sustained focus. But it's not about kind of forcing ourselves, or I'll talk a bit more about that after, but it's not about forcing and strong arming the mind into submission, into focusing, because then there's a lot of tension and the mind just rebels. It's about having patience and just doing this over and over again. And the second type of meditation is so for example, like having a mantra or having something you visualize, or something very repetitive, some anchor which you use to focus. So the most types of meditation or transcendental meditation are this type of samatha samadhi meditation, where you have some anchor and you bring your attention back, or you focus on that over and over again. So the other type of meditation is Vipassana meditation. And Vipassana meditation is not so much about calming or concentrating the mind, but it's about cultivating wisdom or understanding, so that not only do we settle the mind, but we start to permanently remove some of these things that stand in the way of having a peaceful and present mind. So starting to remove the hindrances, or someone also used the word purification, I think, kind of purifying or more permanently changing the habits that lead or give rise to these unwholesome or harmful states of mind. I'll talk more about that on Wednesday when we start to practice Vipassana. Okay, another question here. What bothers you when you sit to meditate? So in the last 2 days, or even before that, if you were meditating already, what are the things that come up in your practice which disrupt your meditation seemingly, or take you away from meditation, or feel very unpleasant or difficult? Or maybe they're very pleasant, but they prevent you from meditating. You can just write a few words in the chat my talking monkey. So maybe a restless mind, a mind that is constantly chattering, aching muscles, and the resulting, I guess, annoyance or irritation that you feel, or distraction. Forgetting that you're meditating and you start maybe following some thoughts and thinking about stuff. Sure. Physical discomfort and restlessness in the body. Yes, also very common. More physical aches, thoughts. Sean, what about thoughts bothers you? Boredom and restlessness.
Just way too many thoughts.
Way too many.
Constant thoughts.
Constant thinking. Okay. So maybe again this kind of monkey mind, this constant noise, which is seemingly out of your control. Angry thoughts, thoughts of aversion, annoyance, things I need to do or ideas that I'm afraid I'll forget after the meditation. So this sounds a bit more like anxiety. Physical discomfort, which distracts you. The feeling of controlling the breath. We can talk about that in the Q&A, Francesco. Remind me later. Thoughts about relationship, back hurting, back pain. Okay, so many different reasons. Apologies, I'm going to blow my nose. Okay, so many things bother us while we meditate. And as you see, you are not alone. So everyone has things that bother them. So don't worry, we're not trying to sit down and have a perfect meditation straight away. And for me also, the things always change which come to bother me. Sometimes it's more worried thinking, sometimes it's sleepiness, sometimes it's more doubting, sometimes it's thinking. And these are things that really never fully go away, but they start to get less and less and start to bother us less, and we start to recognize them much earlier before they compound. So in Vipassana, we have this thing called the 5 hindrances, which is kind of 5 categories of different appearances of mind and body that hinder our meditation, or yeah, that's why they call the hindrances. So you might recognize yourself in some of these. Sometimes it's sensual desire, thinking about what you want and what you desire or what you plan to do, and that takes you away from what's really happening right now. Sometimes it's aversion, anger, annoyance, irritation, and thinking about that and feeling annoyed, or feeling annoyed at why it's not working the way you want it to work. Sometimes it's more this kind of anxiety, restless mind, and anxiety in the body, anxiety in the mind, and the kind of urge of needing to do something, or needing to think, or needing to plan, or worry also. Sometimes it's more this kind of low energy state where you start to become very sleepy, drowsy, and kind of lose yourselves in some dreaming, or start to be too lazy to meditate. Like you feel, it's okay, I can just stop now, and we go and do something else. Sometimes it's the doubt, the expectation. So, I wanted my meditation to be a certain way. It's just doubting about myself, doubting if I'm really fit for this, doubting about technique, doubting about the teacher, doubting me, which is totally fine. And it's totally okay to have a critical mindset and to really use critical thinking to assess whether a technique is working for you. But for the meditation, we try to put this aside and to really give a chance to the technique and to the practice, so that we can see if it really works, instead of just thinking and doubting it. So we have all of these hindrances. And the important thing with the hindrances is to accept that they're going to come, to accept that they're going to keep surfacing in different ways. And the first thing is not to take them personally. So not to personalize when they arrive, not to think you are doing something wrong or that it's your fault. And when these thoughts or these type of patterns start to come, because they are normal and everyone has them. So not to take them personally. And secondly, not to buy into their story. So as we enter into some state of mind of anger, for example, our whole perception is clouded. It's almost like we start putting on colored glasses in our perception, and everything becomes a source of annoyance. You can probably all relate to that. If you're in a bad mood, everything starts to annoy you. Or when we are worried, in a more worried state of mind, everything is a source of worry. Things we didn't worry about before suddenly become worries. So this is kind of like we fall into their story and we buy into their story and the perspective that they give us. So the important thing is just to recognize when some hindrance is present and just to keep coming back to the simple technique of coming back to the breath as it is. Just to recognize, now this is happening, okay, coming back. And we don't have to think more and analyze about why it's happening or what it exactly is, just to recognize some activity which is not serving you and making that hindrance conscious, essentially. So bringing all to the light of consciousness. I talked a bit before about what we place importance on. So some things are unconscious, some things are conscious. And as these unconscious hindrances or these habits of mind surface, we're just recognizing them and making them consciousness. And over time, this reduces them because the body mind starts to realize its habits and realize where it starts to suffer or go into things that are not aligned with ourselves, aligned with what we really feel is important. Okay. So the last thing, so I gave you a bunch of different information, and some of it may have resonated, some of it seems like it doesn't make sense, but it's okay. You heard whatever you need to hear. And the last thing that I want to just share is this kind of one of the most important principles of meditation is the middle way. So in the Buddha's lifetime, when he was practicing to meditate, he kind of had very extreme approaches. So in the first few years of his life, he was a prince and he was engaging in a lot of desires, and he kind of had everything he wanted, and was on his way to become very successful and princely. And then he decided this is not for him, and he kind of flipped into the opposite. So he went into extreme austerity and discipline and joined some ascetics and kind of started to really practice to fasting, very long periods, intensively meditating, and really trying to force his mind into overcoming suffering. But he recognized that suffering just still kept coming back. And then one day he was very close to dying, and he kind of sat underneath a Bodhi tree, and a girl from a nearby village brought him or offered him some rice milk, and he kind of like, he was fasting for a very long time and almost dying, and kind of accepted this and started to nourish himself a bit more and started to meditate under this Bodhi tree, and here he gained his awakening. So he found the middle way, not to be too indulgent and never kind of bring the attention inward, but also not to kind of force the mind and be very tight with the approach. And in the middle way, it is the most easy way or effortless way to practice. So we all have our habit. Some of us are a little bit more serious and tense and approach our tasks very in this kind of type A objective task focus, and you might try very hard to keep your mind on the breath, but it's just not working, and you want to kind of force it, and you might start even controlling the breath usually. So in that case, you want to just ease off a little bit more and just kind of sit back more and receive the breath. But if we start to go too much into just kind of relaxing and enjoying and receiving, then we start to think a lot and dreams start to come. So we want to kind of balance our approach and find on any given day or any given moment what is the middle way for us. So part of meditation is just to keep balancing the mind. So sometimes we are a bit too tight, sometimes we are a bit too loose, and just to balance and learn over time how to find that sweet spot today. Okay. So before we go into Q&A, I want to just invite you to close your eyes. We're going to kind of briefly review the things that we went through today. So closing down the eyes and feeling the body clearly as it is. Letting go of any trying or doing. So today we talked about that in meditation, we, rather than giving importance to the outside world and our position in the outside world, we start to give more importance on our inner experience, our experience of body and mind. We have the precepts, and we have the practice of loving kindness, of creating more, being more kind to ourselves. So it's important when we're meditating not to be too harsh on ourselves. And with this, we create the optimal conditions for meditation. Meditation is about getting to know ourselves better, to bring all to the light of consciousness. We have two main types of meditation. The first one is our concentration or peacefulness meditation, to collect and gather the mind, samadhi, samatha meditation, by bringing us repeatedly towards one meditation object. And the second type of meditation, Vipassana meditation, where we cultivate wisdom or insight and start to more permanently remove some of the habits or hindrances that bring us suffering. We will practice samadhi in the first 4 days. And we also learned about the 5 hindrances, so things that bother us, and they are very common across all meditators. We don't have to be free from them immediately. But it's important just to not buy into their stories too much when they appear, and not to take them personally. And lastly, also to keep in mind this principle of the middle way, to balance our practice in any given moment. Sometimes we are too forceful, too tight. Sometimes we are a bit lazy or not applying any intentionality. So we need to find this balance, which changes every day and every moment. And in this process, we learn about ourselves. Okay, so now you can, feel free if there's any questions, if there's questions about technique, if there's questions about any of the content, anything logistical, this space is open. You can either write in the chat or you can maybe use this raise hand function and start talking out loud. Yes, Kolya. Hello.
Hi, Emma. Thank you for the introduction. I'm spending the next 10 days in a silent retreat at my house. And another thing I want to do is, in a very mindful way, just by myself, do some decluttering of the house. And I wanted to know if you have any tips how I could go about it. For instance, I just give you one what I'm aware of, since I don't want to read and write anything, being truthful to a silent retreat, I will treat books as objects and not, temptation opening of them. But anyway, do you have any tips for mindful decluttering, or would you say that would really detriment my overall experience?
Okay. Have you done a silent retreat before?
No.
Like a Vipassana retreat? Okay. So it's important, firstly, like that we stay in touch. Like I want you, let's stay in touch, especially over WhatsApp. If you're doing the silent retreat, because when we practice intensively meditation, it's important that we're practicing properly. And yeah, to follow the instructions of the guidance, etc. And so for the decluttering part of it, I think that's fine to be able to, and it actually will help you to stay a bit more balanced, a bit more grounded if you have something throughout the day that you're also doing. So I would say, especially because your first silent retreat, not to be too serious or too fixated on the meditation. So to practice the meditation throughout the day, but not to force yourself to kind of practice too much or practice where you're like really forcing it and hating it kind of. So remembering to go outside, to take walks is okay, to enjoy the nature and things, and maybe also to move your body a little bit, taking the opportunity to I don't know, maybe if you're interested in some yoga or things, watching some YouTube videos, all that is great. And yeah, I think, yeah, you can definitely use the time also to declutter or to kind of clean up your space, your house, what you don't need anymore. I think one general tip for time outside of the meditation and how to make it mindful is two things. The first one is to just do one thing at a time. So not to try and do 5 things or 2 things at a time, but really recognize, okay, now I'm going to start decluttering and I'm going to do this. And then you start doing it and you're just doing that one thing. So that helps with the awareness of what you're doing and will ultimately create more mindfulness and concentration in that task. And yeah, taking these 10 days also as an opportunity to slow down. So you can let the day breathe. You don't have to kind of make every hour of the day something productive and something that increases your mental health or well-being. No, allow yourself to stay relaxed and open, do your meditations, and allow the day to take its rhythm and find the rhythm of it. That would be my general advice for that.
Thank you so much.
And enjoy, not too serious about that.
That's a great tip. Thank you.
And yeah, let me know if anything comes up, anything intense, or just shoot me a message. We can also arrange some time to talk. Okay, Giriya is asking, how do you do Vipassana meditation without anchoring towards anything? Yes, so this is a more advanced question. So I don't really want to go too much into that because I don't want to confuse people, but essentially, when we first practice Vipassana meditation, we have some anchors, some meditation object. which helps us to build more awareness of mind and body. So Vipassana is just to have awareness of mind and body and the activity of mind and body. So rather than to get caught in the content of the thought, we just recognize the activity of thinking. And as we get more skill in this, we can start to do that with less and less effort, and it starts to happen more and more automatically. So we start being able to let go of some specific meditation object or anchor. So then we move more towards open awareness practices or open monitoring practices, where we're just observing the activity of body and mind and the phenomena of body and mind in the present moment as it's happening. But if we go too early into just open awareness and kind of do nothing meditation, we just end up thinking about things. So it's a gradual transition, and for me it took many years, and even today I still kind of balance. Sometimes I need a bit more of the meditation object, sometimes a bit less, but that's essentially how Vipassana transitions towards without an object. If none of that made sense to you, don't worry, just practice the technique as I'm instructing it. Yes, David, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for what you do, by the way. It's really awesome. I have a background of techniques, different, mantras, TM you spoke about. What's the actual technique for this? I know it's thoughts come, bring it back to the breath, focus on that very lightly. Do we get more into different techniques, or?
Yeah. On day 5, we will start practicing body scanning as our Vipassana technique.
Okay.
There's different types of Vipassana technique. There's also like noting, but in this course, for this 10-day basic course, we're going to practice the body scanning because it's a more easy and start for Vipassana. But yeah, that's the 2 techniques. And then later we do some loving kindness, which is not Vipassana, but it helps to do some in the end.
Okay.
And
So there is more
also,
technique to it.
Yeah, and the technique, I mean, I will also give many tips and kind of subtleties of the technique in the guided meditation. And so that's, I mean, what you said was the basics of it, but of course there's many.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to like jump ahead or anything. I was very curious.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, once we get a few days in, then we can talk a bit more about if you have specific questions about technique, if something, for example, with the hindrances, there's different ways of dealing with them. For example, when we're a bit more sleepy, what we need to do is increase the energy in the body mind. So then a technique or a point would be just to kind of sit up a bit straighter and apply a bit more intentionality with the practice, or intentionality with focusing. But sometimes when we're very angry or tense, then focusing too much will actually make us more angry, and we need to kind of relax more.
Yeah.
So there's all these points which.
Can I have a second part to that question, if you don't mind? I'm sure a lot of people here have a question. I like struggle every time I try to meditate, like my legs cramp up or my back, so I have to like adjust. Like, what do you recommend for that? Especially if it's going to be over an hour, say 2 or 3 hours. Or is that just something you have to get used to for years? Or
you mean meditating for 2 or 3 hours straight?
Well, yeah, I'm saying, I mean, even 30 minutes, I'm kind of like, oh my God, I got to kind of,
Yeah. So during the meditation, the important thing is to relax the body. So if there's some unconscious tightening or tension in the body, this can create a lot of discomfort. And part of the process of meditation is to recognize and let go of these tensions, both in the body and in the mind. And so importantly, to set up a good posture. So kind of one where you are nice and straight, but if you're kind of tensing and trying to be perfectly straight, there will be a lot of tension in the muscles, and it will create pain. So finding, again, this middle way between some tonus to kind of keep the posture and relaxation, but not too much that you kind of start to slump. And finding also what works for you in terms of the posture. So some people can sit very easily and cross-legged because they're more flexible. Some people need to maybe put a little cushion underneath the knees or elevate the hips more. It's also completely okay to practice Vipassana while sitting in a chair. For example, now I'm recovering from knee surgery. I have a torn meniscus, and I can't bend my knee more than 90 degrees. So I'm sitting on a chair to meditate, and that's completely okay. And the second thing, outside of the meditation, if you are practicing movement and practicing some things which make your body make you more aware of your body and the movement, and of course mobility, this will make it more easy to sit. So for example, yoga, or usually not if it's something super hardcore and intense that will sometimes create more tension in the body, but something which is kind of light and movement and exercise which creates more fluidity and in the body will help.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to keep talking. So now the 1 hour is finished. So if anyone needs to go, you can also catch the recording of this. But we'll continue talking as long as people have questions. I'm happy to answer. Yes. What else?
Yeah. So this is what happens with me. I noticed it yesterday, first time during that day 1 recording. Otherwise, I notice this very often when I do yoga nidra. So I try to practice yoga nidra. My aim is almost daily, but then because of this sensation in my legs, I tend to avoid it. What happens is, as my body tends to relax, I feel very, very strong stiffness in my legs. It is not pain, but it is so strong stiffness that I have to shake my leg. If and we say that in Vipassana or in any kind of meditation, we have to try to keep the body still. Also, it is called recommended in case of yoga nidra. So if I try to control that stiffness or that shaking my legs, then I tend to feel kind of anxiety or some kind of knot in my heart. And sometimes I feel very stiffness in my face. Then I have to remind myself, no, face relax, or eyebrows, forehead relax. But then I feel kind of knot in my heart. And to relieve that knot in the heart, I tend to shake my legs. I don't know how are they connected, but I have just noticed this pattern with my body with relation to the meditation and yoga nidra. I don't know if I'm putting that correctly in the words, and if anybody else ever feels that.
Okay. And so it happens during sitting meditation also, or just during the lying yoga?
Yes.
Also?
So I practiced using the day 0 recording. That day it didn't happen, but day 1 recording morning meditation, when I was practicing, it happened at least 20 times in that 60 minutes. And I had to eventually shake my legs or shake my body to, just let go of that stiffness. It is very uncomfortable kind of feeling.
Sure.
It is.
So what you, so in the practice, there will be different aches and pains which come up, and for some people it's different. So for you, there's some specific thing like this stiffness, and then the resulting anxiety and tension that appears in some other place. So you cited your heart. It's good that you can be aware of that. And then the kind of, maybe your mind starts thinking like, oh, it's happening again, oh my God, worry starts to appear and thinking starts to appear, which only increases anxiety, which at some point makes you to move and shake the thing. So the first thing is that it's okay. It's okay to move, and it's okay. You don't have to be perfect and have complete stillness for the 1 hour period. So it's something we are working slowly up to, but we don't need to do it today. So what you can try is just to recognize when it starts happening. So recognize the feeling of stiffness as a sensation, recognize the sensation, the contraction in the heart, recognize when you're worrying, your thinking starts to happen, and just gently come back to the technique, so the breath. And if it keeps happening, and if your attention is kept drawing to that, and you start to like really worry and fight it, if it becomes overwhelming, just move, just adjust the leg how you need to. Maybe you need to extend it, but try to do so slowly and be aware of what happens in the body. So move it slowly. Okay, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to move my leg. You adjust your leg, you adjust your position, and then you let it go. That's it. You continue the technique. So if you try to fight it, it will just create a lot of tension. So again, finding the middle way here between just constantly moving all the time, and whenever it gets a little bit uncomfortable, fidgeting and moving, versus kind of pushing through too much and forcing yourself, because that only creates further anxiety and the worry. And Vipassana isn't about sitting still for 1 hour. Vipassana is about self-observation and observing how this works, how the process of worry starts to appear, how the process of tightening, of contraction, of fear starts to occur, and to learn how it works so that you can recognize it earlier and abandon that earlier. Yeah, this would be my thoughts on the subject. Does that help a bit?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try that.
Yeah, and yeah, you can report back to me. Let me know how that goes for you.
Sure. Thank you.
Barbara, you also raise your hand.
Hey,
Hello.
everyone. I have a very specific question to numbness of the legs, because I tend to have that after some time when I sit cross-legged. And is this something that also improves with practicing and with being more flexible and more, I think yoga also helps, but is this kind of is this kind of a sensation, or is that really something like we don't want? Like, is it okay to observe this for a time, or is it really something, I mean, there's no blood going into the legs. So what is it about the numbness of the legs?
Yeah. So this is a bit something that you have to find out yourself, where is too much and where is like, okay, just moving all the time because you're uncomfortable. So what happens over time is the mind body starts to learn how to relax fully all the tension in the body. So if you are sitting maybe on retreat, especially where this pain really starts to build, or the discomfort starts to build hours and hours on top of each other, you can find a place where the body is so relaxed and the mind is so relaxed and stops reacting to that sensation, and you can be completely in equanimity towards it. But you can also use concentration and the power of meditation to really overcome pain. So if there's really some kind of damage, some permanent damage which is happening, you can also use the power of concentration and meditation, if you're very good at it, to completely ignore that and continue concentrating, and then you will damage your knee. So I would suggest for you to gently play with that and learn and observe and feel how the body is after the session. If you kind of like pushed it a little bit with staying in the posture, how it is with the knee. Does it feel you can move it a little bit? Does it feel like, oh, something is wrong there, or something? And really learning about that. But definitely, like from my own in my own experience, like the more I meditate, the more easy it is to sit. And sitting 1 hour without moving, if you have a posture which is relatively good, is not very is never damaging to the body. Usually if it's already hurting in the first few minutes of the posture, then you should change the posture. But if you're kind of comfortable for 20, 30 minutes, and then it starts happening maybe after 40, 50 minutes, then usually it's okay because the posture is good. So yeah, just invite you to learn about that, and flexibility helps, but also relaxation of mind and body.
Thank you.
Mhm. What about drinking tea and coffee? Would you? Okay, there's a few questions in the chat that I missed. As a person, how do you see it? Okay, let me answer the easy one first. What about drinking tea and coffee? Would you recommend not taking any during the 10 days? It depends how you use those substances. So if you kind of enjoy coffee and you kind of drink it, it's completely okay to continue. I'm also I love drinking tea. I love drinking a pu'er tea in the mornings. But the key is to recognize when you are dependent on a substance, or when you are really just learning and using a substance consciously. So if you are used to drinking a coffee every day, you don't have to kind of quit cold turkey, but it might be also useful for yourself to see how you are without that coffee. So that's what I like to do. I like to kind of do something for some time, but then also take it away for a few days to see what I am like without it, and to recognize also that there's no dependence on that specific thing. And yeah, so tea and coffee I think is okay, but if you're smashing 5 cups of coffee a day, maybe try to reduce it a little bit, and bring more awareness into that habit. As a person, how do you see yourself before and after Vipassana meditation? How much change? A lot, I think. So it's very difficult to separate now Vipassana from the rest of my life, because my occupation is also related to Vipassana. So in a way, Vipassana has completely transformed what I was doing. I was heading in a certain direction, in a certain career path in finance, and then changed everything. So it's hard to separate what is due. But I really feel that Vipassana has given me a lot, the courage, the confidence, the trust in things, and the self-awareness of what I really need, or what I really place importance on, and the courage to make those decisions. And it continues. I mean, that's why I continue practicing every day, because I haven't missed a day, I don't know, since I started. Because it just always in new ways, the practice keeps transforming and keeps giving new benefits and new angles on things which I didn't see before. So it's, I don't know, for me, this is going to be a lifelong journey, and I'm just curious to see how it keeps changing and developing. In the beginning, I came to Vipassana because it just helped me to, focus a little bit more during my exams and my job interviews and things. And of course, that's not the same reason as it is now while I'm practicing. For example, with my knee surgery recently, Vipassana helped me tremendously in dealing with the pain in the knee, and really deep listening to the body and what I can do, what I can't do. So helping me to heal that better, and also to be much happier, and not to place because I like to move a lot. I like to actually teach also dance, improvisation. And so a lot of my importance is placed on being physically able. And then after this incident with the knee, suddenly I'm not able to do those things anymore. And Vipassana is helping me to be adaptable and to be resilient within, and to recognize, I can just shift my importance or work with more subtlety, and work with the floor more. I can't still walking with crutches, but to be flexible and adaptable. So this is maybe how it's helping me now, but it keeps changing, and I have no idea where it's going, but I'm enjoying it. Have I heard about the RAIN approach to deal with hindrances? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that acronym. What does RAIN stand for? Recognize, accept,
Yeah,
investigate.
recognize, accept, inspect, and non-identify.
Yes. This is essentially Vipassana. So to have the awareness of the hindrance when it's appearing, Vipassana, we'll talk more on Wednesday, we're jumping ahead of it, but to accept, so the equanimity part of Vipassana, to allow it, to see it, to inspect it, to inspect its sensory experience, the vibration of thinking, the vibration in the body, maybe the contraction somewhere, and to, what was N?
And non-identify, so
Yeah, no.
detach from it.
Yes, so just to observe it as it is without I am this hindrance. So this is kind of what I was saying before, like not to buy into its story and not to take it personally. And yes, I like that acronym. It's great.
Thank you.
But being careful not to turn it into a thinking exercise.
That would be the Western approach.
Yes. Am I still practicing martial arts? Not directly, but I'm practicing a lot of movement, and I'm working a lot with martial arts principles, especially from Aikido, and Qigong, and researching that in my movement. But I'm not going to a dojo regularly. But I plan to spend more time doing Aikido once my knee heals. Okay, we can keep going further. Let's do a bit more. Yes, Barbara. Are you still raising your hand, or?
Sorry, this is still from last time.
From last time. Okay, David, go ahead.
Yes. Is the after we complete the course here, is the technique practiced twice a day, or is it once a day? What is ideal?
Yeah. The ideal is to practice the technique 24/7 all the time. And
yeah.
And so with the mindfulness of breathing, that's not as possible because we have to do stuff, but with Vipassana, it is more possible. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is to practice the technique all the time. As I'm talking to you, I continuously bring the awareness back to my body and to try to be aware when some tightening, contraction appears in the mind body, and just to relax it. So just to briefly pause at times, to feel the way I'm sitting, to feel the body. So that's the ideal. And then there is recommendations or steps to make it more continuous, because ultimately in situations, that's where it helps the most to practice. So to bring it into every moment of our lives. But of course, we need to train that, and that's why we use the technique, and that's why we create this little container of doing it in the beginning and in the end of the day, which is a very nice way of doing it, to do it first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening. But different things work for different people. So it's just a invitation. But for example, now I'm experimenting with also doing it multiple times for the day for shorter periods here and there, which also works well if you have the time. But for me, in the morning is usually the most important time to practice it, so that kind of creates more likelihood that I remember to do it for the rest of the day, to remember to pay attention to my experience.
So are you spending like an hour in the morning, or 2 hours, or?
Usually an hour in the morning, and then kind of throughout the rest of the day when I have time, when I have a few minutes. But also even some micro moments, like for a few seconds, like if I'm working on the computer, then I'll just take a few seconds once in a while just to maybe feel the breath, feel the body. And the key is to find what works for you, and to, but having some formal session in the morning is usually the foundation of it. Let's say.
It makes sense to start the day.
Start the day up. Start the day right. Yes. Okay. Taking more of your time than planned. Yes, Kolia.
Sorry, I have one last question. As you recommended to use yoga, actually, yeah, I frequently do yoga. I love it. So what I, in my previous non-guided meditation, what I always liked is do a yoga exercise of 20 to 30 minutes first, and then go for half an hour, 45 minutes into meditation. That sequence of yoga first and then meditate, would you recommend that?
Yes, it's nice to do it that way, but it's also nice to not do it that way. So if you do some yoga before, if you do some movement, some activity before, it will be easier to sit. Your body will be warmed up, you will be a bit more flexible, a bit more in your body. It will be easier to sit and concentrate. But it's also interesting to sit without relying on that, or to sit first thing and to see what the body and mind is like without that. It's a bit like with with anything. You kind of, there's no right answer ever with Vipassana. It's everything is just different dimensions, different perspectives, different variables you shift and change, which have a different effect on your mind body. And the journey is to find out for yourself how, because let's say, the reason I say that is because maybe there's a situation in life where you need to practice Vipassana, where your body is not in this optimal state after yoga. And there, if you're constantly relying on being able to practice meditation, when you have a very nice, relaxed, loose body, it will be much more difficult to use the technique in that moment than if you had kind of learned how to do that, or at least spend some sessions to do it without first calming. But for example, in the beginning, when we're first learning, we want to kind of create a nice optimal conditions for it. And there it's nice to practice some yoga before and then do it. So I would say try both.
I will, thank you.
Okay. So let's maybe end it there. And yeah, many information, things to think about. The most important thing is just to come back to the practice, to really sit with it, to not make this an intellectual exercise, but to really sit with yourself and to learn about yourself. So
Thank you so much for your guidance.
Thank you for joining. Sadhu.
Thank you.
So tomorrow there will be a group meditation, same time, 10 a.m. My time. And yeah, welcome to join for that. Otherwise, there's Q&As on Monday, and then next lecture will be on Wednesday, same time. Good luck with the practice. And there was someone who wanted to talk about like doing more intensive meditation, and I will just stay back for a few minutes.
That was me. I will just wait.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.